August 2005, 19 of us traveled from our homes in the San Francisco Bay Area and Santa Cruz, California, and Chicago, Illinois, to Cuba on a fantastic journey. We are Tsukimi Kai, an intergenerational group of mostly Nikkei musicians, artists, dancers, students, educators, researchers, community activists. We range in age from 12 to 86 years. Most of us are of Japanese or Okinawan ancestry, but we are also of Hungarian, Mexican, Jamaican, Guatemalan, Italian, and Chinese descent. We shared a common goal: to explore and celebrate the parallel histories and lives of Nikkei in Cuba and Nikkei in the US. We reached across the boundaries of physical space, language, culture, history, and politics to exchange, through cultural expression and dialogue, stories of our migration from Japan and Okinawa and the building of our lives in other lands, which are now our home. The word Tsukimi Kai suggests the circumstance of people who are separated by distance, yet feeling connection with each other as we look up at the moon.
When I first heard about this trip and the idea of connecting with Cubans of Japanese ancestry through taiko and music, it was something that couldn't have been more exciting to me. I've wanted to go to Cuba for years, and to be able to merge my two passions of taiko and art in one trip was it. Callan Nishimoto and I were delegated to head the performance component. We decided to feature the talented Kizakura taiko musicians, students of Someyoshino Taiko Ensemble, and ranging in age from 12 to 71. The program usually opened up with our rendition of an original Japanese-American song by Nobuko Miyamoto and Reverend Mas Kodani of Los Angeles, performed by our whole Tsukimi Kai ensemble. Even though the inexperienced performers were tentative at times, they gave it their all when it came to showtime. And also Debbie Kajiyama and Jose Navarrete wowed the audience with their amazing danzón and tango dance performances.
One of the reasons why we presented a danzón is because Cuba is the birthplace of danzón.
But the highlight was the obon dancing finale, where we invited the audience to join us as Callan played his shamisen, various Kizakura musicians and I added the taiko and atarigane beat, and our singers sang their hearts out.
We performed in 3 cities, Havana, Nuevo Gerona, and Cienfuegos, and conducted over 30 interviews, including over 20 Nikkei Cubanos families.
Tears were surfacing quite a bit. And I think it was probably the realization that here I've come to a country where I didn't know that there were other Japanese people living there. And then to be able to have this opportunity to connect with them, it's hard to put words to it, but it was like being able to connect with people at the heart level, to connect with people who had the same ancestry, to have a chance to be able to talk with them and to see what it's been like for them to live in Cuba.
Oh, I asked them why they came to Cuba. 働きに来ましたの。キューバに。
そうしてこの島に来たんです。またこの島に。キューバにハバナで働いて。ハバナでサトウキビ
Sato. Sato.
Azúcar.
Sato. Oh, yeah, sugar.
Sugar.
Oh, sugar cane.
Sí.
Oh.
Sí, siempre tomate, melones, ají y boniato, frijoles y arroz, varias cosas.
You know, when you talk about Japanese Cubans, you would expect them to, you know, recognize them as Japanese. But no, that whole group, there was a great mixture. The particular interview I had, the one that stands out in my mind, is when I interviewed this 97-year-old Issei who was in this home, but it was strictly for the seniors. First thing I said to him, Nihongo haranan shimasu ka? Do you speak Japanese? He said, oh, yeah. And then he started to speak in Japanese, and he couldn't stop. In fact, he sang a song in Japanese to us. What was interesting, though, as long as he lived in Cuba, he felt a very nostalgic yearning for Japan, but he knew that he never go back because Cuba was his homeland.
Mi nombre es Kato, de segunda generación, y mis padres provienen de Miyagi-Ken, Sendai. Pero pienso que vino por lo menos 1905, 1904, y él no vino directamente a Cuba. Él fue a otros países de América. Esta canción. Moshi moshi kameyo kame-san.
Remembered all these Japanese children's songs that I was taught by my grandmother, and she just kept singing them, and she wouldn't let us leave, and she ordered out Cuba Libres so that we'd stay longer and she could keep singing.
My name is Mario Naito. I was born in Havana. My father is Japanese, who has died recently at the age of 96 years old. He came to Cuba in 1928, and he was married in 1946 with my mother, was a Cuban. My father began working here in Cuba in agriculture, but later he developed in commerce, and then he also worked as a translator in the fishing Cuban industry after the revolution. And I remember that my father taught me the Japanese national anthem since I was a little boy, and I could speak the first Japanese words, omedetou, ohayo.
There were like 3 Japanese sisters living there, and I think the oldest sister, that I don't know what is her last name. Carmen. Debbie started talking to her in Japanese and also in Spanish. It was kind of really making her to really bring in some memories of her childhood.
Gracias.
Mata irashai.
Arigatou
Irashai.
Mata.
Mata. Irashai. Que vuelvan otra vez.
Mata irashai.
Es como...
¡Viva caramba! Nunca había hablado.
¿No? ¿Ustedes son cubanas o japonesas? ¿Cómo se ven?
Nos sentimos orgullosos de eso, pero bueno, nacimos aquí, nos criamos aquí, las costumbres son cubanas y ya.
No, yo me siento cubana, me siento japonesa, pero a veces me siento más japonesa que cubana. Por eso me gusta hablar. Watashi no otousan no okasan, toki Nihongo no hanashi shimashita.
Y en Japón los casaban desde que eran chiquitos, decían cuál va a ser tu señora. En Cuba no, aquí el que le gusta a uno ya se casa con él. Pero en Japón era como papá que tuvo que ir a Japón, casarse allá, que la familia le escogía a la esposa y tenía que casarse con ella y punto, sin decir nada más. Sí, no importa. Mientras que
Our group participated in the annual Obon Festival on August 14th on the Isla de Juventud, the Isle of Youth. This is the biggest annual cultural event for the small community of 1,000 plus Cubanos of Nikkei descent who are spread throughout the country. Francisco Miyasaka was our main contact in Cuba. In fact, our trip could not have happened without him. Like all adult males of Japanese ancestry, his father was imprisoned during World War II by the Batista regime, acting in collusion with the U.S. government.
The only thing I remember when I was 4 years old was the scene of my father being taken by two guards, uniformed soldiers, along the narrow trail leading from my home to outside. It's the only thing I still have in my mind. It was really shocking to me, I think.
あんたのお父さんも
僕の母さんと during 6 months, only 6 months. My mother was only 6 months in prison.
Tomas Honma Nakamura was actually kind of one of the youngest people who was locked up in the model prison. Tomas was a student in Havana at the time, and he wasn't swept up in those raids on the Japanese homes. So he went to look for his father.
I received a telegram from Tinguaro saying that our father was in prison. And I wanted to see them, my father and Mr. Ogawa, and the police let me in, but when I was going to out, he said, "You can't go out."
We visited the prison, and I was just amazed at the immensity of these prisons. And then the particular barrack or prison where the Japanese were interned. Just little cubby holes. And I can't imagine that they were imprisoned there for 3 years. No comparison with ours. We, at least when we were incarcerated in the relocation centers, we were there as a family. We were not separated. Whereas here, just the men were incarcerated, the women and children had to fend for themselves, and I imagine they went through a lot of suffering during that time.
There was cases of families or wives who could afford the money to go to the island to visit their husbands. They were forced to speak in Spanish. The Japanese wife who couldn't speak Spanish only looked at his husband without speaking.
Right after the revolution, there was a lot of counter-revolutionary activity in the hills in the central part of Cuba, actually near Trinidad, which is one of the places where we visited. And Miyasaka was in college at the time, so he and his friends, or actually he used the term comrades, were very impressed with what they saw, and they thought that this was something worth fighting for.
The night when I left my home with uniform and rifle, etc., to go to join my comrades, my mother was weeping. I said, of course, but my father didn't say anything, only looking at me, staring. But when I left out from the door and walked about 5 meters, he only said, "Ganbatte koi."
That sounds like my dad.
I realized at this moment that how he loved me.
Tambores grandes, muy pesados. Y este grupo, especialmente para nosotros. Antes de la revolución, le decía que prácticamente casi todos eran agricultores. De los japoneses habían algunos pescadores. Comerciantes son muy pocos, esa era una minoría. Entonces mi papá pensó prepararme a mí como heredero y entonces empezó ya en el año 60, me fue preparando para la agricultura. Bueno, precisamente en el año 62 ya cambió la situación de que todo el que pudiera estudiar, que estudiara. Inclusive estudié algo que me pareció lo más lejano posible al campo, la informática.
Niños, no hay que pedir nada de dinero aquí en Cuba. Yo sé cómo es educación niños y para ir a hospital y esas cosas. Cuando no tiene dinero, en Japón no puede ir a hospital ni nada. Pero aquí, si todo pobre. Pero nadie no se hace así.
Bueno, las esperanzas son seguir creando familia y mantener la tradición japonesa. ¿Entiendes?
Sí.
Y si un día se puede, viajar a Japón, que no lo conozco.
Esto es una California, ¿no? De todos los países del mundo, que a través de estos encuentros nosotros podemos conocernos, demostrarnos, ¿no?, lo que sentimos por la paz mundial, por el neoliberalismo, por todas esas cosas, que es el único momento que uno tiene para conocer las opiniones tanto de cubanos como de americanos, como de diferentes países del mundo, ¿entiendes? Que sigan con eso, que nosotros lo vamos a seguir apoyando y que nuestra disposición está para cuando quieran. La verdad que sí.
Was for me the highlight. I think playing taiko in a public plaza in Cuba, surrounded by the new friends that we had met, and seeing how happy and satisfied everybody in the group was with how the trip had gone. It was an incredible end to an incredible trip.
Anywhere you go in Cuba, there's always some musicians, out in the street or in a restaurant just playing, and they are all so good. Like every single one of them were just great musicians. And then you had to play in front of people who were not only musicians but drummers specifically. They'd be watching, and they'd know when you mess up.
People would be talking to us in a friendly chat, even though we didn't know them or they didn't know us. They would ask, we would tell them that we were from California, and they'd be like, "Oh, San Francisco." We'd be like, "Yeah." They were just so nice. They would always give us hugs and kisses.
Hearing the many artists we met speak to the fact that they have free education. We met people in an artists union who were just telling us all these things about the education and the healthcare and the opportunities that they had to show. There were galleries everywhere.
We are having a very hot summer. The humidity is over 80.
And it seemed like there was so much to tell. Like it was only 2 weeks and nothing can happen in 2 weeks, but a lot happened.
Sayonara nante doshite mo inaen baru ya nakunaru.